These are the issues that we have to talk about. We have to ask ourselves a simple question. How does it happen that over the last 45 years, despite a huge explosion of technology and a massive increase in worker productivity, how does it happen? Why does it happen that the average American worker in real inflation accounted for dollars is not earning 1 penny more than he or she did 45 years ago? I want you to think about that. Why does it happen? Why does it happen that over the last 30 years, the top 1% have seen a $21 trillion increase in their wealth, while the bottom half of the American people have actually seen a decline in their wealth? How does it happen that 3 people today own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, and the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92%? These are the hard questions we have got to ask ourselves. And the answer is that we have a corporate elite. And I'm talking about Wall Street, and I'm talking about the drug companies, and I'm talking about the insurance companies, and I am talking about the military-industrial complex. I am talking about the fossil fuel industry. I'm talking about the prison industrial complex. I am talking about the 1%. And we have got to recognize that no real change will take place in this country unless millions of people are prepared to stand up and fight back and tell this corporate elite that this country belongs to all of us, not just a handful of billionaires. Now, that's hard stuff. That is hard stuff. It's stuff you're not going to see on the TV. You're not going to hear in Congress. What you will see are ads attacking me personally, attacking the concept of Medicare for all, paid for by the insurance companies and the drug companies. You're going to hear reports coming out from corporate think tanks saying Bernie's ideas are crazy, they're unrealistic. But understand, behind those ads, behind those attacks, are people who make tens of billions of dollars from the status quo. And our job is to change the status quo. Our job is to create a government which is no longer talking about austerity for the working people of this country in terms of cuts to health care, cuts to education, cuts to infrastructure. We are talking about austerity for the people on top who have never had it so good. So what does it mean? What does an agenda for working families mean? Let me lay it out very briefly. Number one, you work 40 hours a week, you're going to make a living wage at least $15 an hour. And when we talk about wages, we're going to end the absurdity of women making 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. And when we talk about wages, we know that workers in unions do better than non-union workers. We're going to make it easier for workers to join unions in this country. And when we talk about an agenda for working families, we are here to say loudly and proudly to the 1% and to corporate America, yeah, you are going to pay more in taxes. We're going to rescind Trump's tax breaks for the 1%, and we're going to use that money to help rebuild our infrastructure and create millions of good-paying jobs. Yes, we say to Amazon, a little bit crazy that that corporation, among many others, made $10 billion in profit last year. Anybody know how much they paid in taxes? You got it, zero. A little bit crazy, and we're going to end that craziness. And what we say to the young people of this country, who, unless we turn it around, and I intend to turn it around, your generation will have, for the first time in the modern history of this country, a lower standard of living than your parents. You're going to leave school more in debt. Your real wages will be lower than your parents. You're going to have a harder time buying a house or a car. So we say to that generation and the younger generation several things. Number one, we will make public colleges and universities tuition free because every young person in this country has a right to a higher education, whether it's community college, college, technical school. You have that right regardless of the income of your family. Second of all, let me throw out another controversial idea. And 3 years from now, it will not be controversial because we're going to pass it. All right? We are going to cancel all student debt in this country. And I am told again and again, Bernie, that's such an expensive idea. You want to make public colleges and universities tuition free. You want to cancel student debt. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's true. It does. It's about a $2.2 trillion proposal over 10 years. We pay for that proposal by imposing a modest tax on Wall Street speculation, which raises $2.4 trillion. And what this campaign is about is thinking big, not small. It is asking us, how come it's okay 11 years ago to bail out the crooks on Wall Street who destroyed the economy? Not a problem. How come it is okay to give over $1 trillion in tax breaks under Trump to the richest 1% in large corporations? Not a problem. How come it is okay to provide hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks and subsidies to the fossil fuel industry? Not a problem. But somehow, when I stand up and say that maybe we should start doing things for the working families of this country, everybody in the world has a problem. Well, we're going to turn the tables. And the other thing we're going to do, which is to me enormously important, and that is that we are going to end the international embarrassment of the United States of America being the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. It is literally impossible to defend the obscenity and the dysfunctionality of the current healthcare system. And I'll tell you why. And more people know why. Right now, we are spending twice as much per person on healthcare as do the people of any other country. In other words, if you went out and you bought a cheap car and the car broke down and it didn't work well, you'd say to yourself, well, you know, I spent $300 for the car. What do you expect? But if you buy something that is expensive, you expect it to work. Well, you got by far the most expensive healthcare system in the world. It is not working for the middle class. It is only working for the insurance industry and the drug companies who made $100 billion in profit last year. So here's a radical idea, that maybe we have a healthcare system that works for the American people rather than a handful of billionaires who own the healthcare industry. So, we are spending twice as much per capita on healthcare as do our friends in Canada or the industrialized world. This is what you get for it. Twice as much. You get 87 million people uninsured or underinsured. Underinsured means you got a high deductible and you don't go to the doctor when you should. It means that you are paying the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Last month, I went to Canada with a bunch of Americans who were diabetic. We bought insulin. Anyone know the differential in price for insulin in Canada compared to the United States? It is 1/10 the price. You got 7.5 million people using insulin in this country. They're paying 10 times more for the same product as the people in Canada because the pharmaceutical industry is not only incredibly greedy, they are corrupt, engaged in price fixing. And as all of you know, in this state where you have such a terrible opioid epidemic, they are right now being charged with knowing that opioids were addictive and yet selling those products all over the country, knowing that they were addictive. Those are the folks that we are dealing with. So what we are going to do is end the absurdity of so many uninsured or underinsured, and the absurdity of us paying by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, and end the absurdity, and we don't talk about this enough. Right now in America, 500,000 people a year go bankrupt because they cannot pay their medical bills. You got that? It's more than ridiculous. It is obscene. Just think for a moment. Somebody in your family is diagnosed with cancer or some terrible illness. What happens? You got to start thinking about, all right, how am I going to deal with this? What doctor do I go to? What hospital do I go to? What treatment do I get? You got a lot of questions you got to answer. How does my family survive if I am not working and I'm in the hospital for major surgery? How do I get my feet back on the ground? What is the best thing that I can do? Those are huge issues that people with serious illness have got to deal with. What they should not have to deal with is the fact that their family will be financially ruined because they were diagnosed and treated for cancer. That is barbaric. That is not what should be happening in a democratic, civilized society. So very briefly, what Medicare for All is about, and you're going to hear a lot of, when the healthcare industry makes $100 billion a year, they got a whole lot of money to put lying ads on television. That's what they're going to do, and on the radio and newspapers and the whole works. So you're going to see me personally demonized and Medicare for All demonized. So let me be very frank and tell you what it does. And we're building and improving on what they do in Canada. So it's not a radical idea. Number one, Medicare is the most popular health insurance program in this country today. We expand it. Medicare is a good program, not good enough. It does not cover dental care. It does not cover hearing aids, does not cover eyeglasses. We expand it to cover all of that. Medicare today does not cover home health care. You got a whole lot of people with disabilities and older people would rather stay home if they can get the help rather than go into a nursing home. And by doing that, it is a cost-effective approach for people with disabilities and older people. So we expand Medicare to cover home health care. We do away with all out-of-pocket expenses. We do away with all premiums. We do away with all co-payments. As is the case in Canada, if you end up in the hospital for 2 months, you leave the hospital without owing a nickel. You go to any doctor you want, freedom of choice, any hospital you want, any clinic you want, which, by the way, in too many instances does not happen today because people are in one insurance network and their doctor they like is in another network. All right? How do we pay for it? Well, we're already paying for health care. You're paying for health care today with your premiums, with your deductibles, with your out-of-pocket expenses. We will pay for health care the way every other major country on earth pays for it, through a general tax base, which will be funded in a progressive way. That means that the overwhelming majority of the American people, maybe except the very wealthy, will be paying less for health care than they pay today. No premiums, no out-of-pocket expenses, no more deductibles. You walk into the doctor's office, you don't take out your wallet, you don't take out your credit card, and you spend less than we're spending today. Why is that? Because we're going to end the $100 billion in profits that the insurance companies and the drug companies make. And more importantly, when you have a dysfunctional and complicated system that has hundreds and hundreds of separate insurance programs, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars a year to administer those programs. We eliminate that because everybody in America has the same program. So, to my mind, and I think a growing number of Americans, the time is long overdue for us to have a healthcare system which is based on the human needs of our people, not on the profit motive of the drug companies and the insurance companies. And we implement that very simply. I want you all to know, because you're going to hear a lot of other thoughts and ideas, but we implement this very simply. Right now, to be eligible for Medicare, you got to be 65. Year number one, it's a 4-year transition program. Year number one, you go from 65 down to 55. Year 2, down to 45. Year 3, down to 35. Year 4, we cover every man, woman, and child in this country. That is it. Not more complicated than that. Last point, a couple of points I want to make, but last major point that I want to make. Then I'll make some not so major points. Last very major point. Donald Trump is wrong about everything. Even though we have to admit he is a self-described genius. But he's wrong about that, I guess. But where he is very dangerously wrong, not just ugly wrong, not just racist or sexist wrong, but where he is dangerously wrong for our country and the entire world is when he considers climate change to be a hoax. So I know this is another radical idea. You're all ready for another radical idea? President of the United States, I will listen to science. Oh, wow. Oh, my God. How radical can you get? And what the scientists are telling us in a virtually unanimous voice, climate change is real. Climate change is caused by human activity. Climate change is already causing devastating problems in our country and all over the world. And, frighteningly, what they tell us is if we do not get our act together in the next 11 or 12 years, the damage that climate change will do will be irreparable, not able to be repaired. And what we are talking about are more extreme weather disturbances. We are talking about more drought, more flood, more acidification of the ocean, more rising sea levels. We're talking about people around the world who will be forced to migrate from their own land because they can't grow crops or don't have clean drinking water. And when that takes place, you create national security and war-like issues. That is what we're talking about in the future. I am proud to tell you that I have introduced the most comprehensive climate change program ever introduced by any candidate running for anything. And I am told correctly, it's an expensive proposition. It is. And you tell me what the alternative is. We are fighting for the future of our planet. And we have a moral responsibility to make sure that the planet we leave our children and our grandchildren is a planet that is healthy and is habitable. So this is not only an expensive proposition, which it is, but by the way, it will create up to 20 million jobs in the transition from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. But on top of that, what makes it even more complicated, this is not just an American issue. You know, if we had a sane president who understood climate change and who was doing everything possible here in America, it wouldn't be good enough because we got a global crisis. So the job of the next president, and I certainly hope that will be me, will be not only to transform our own energy system, but to lead the world. And it's not easy, but it has to happen. And my vision is, my hope is, can't guarantee it, but my hope is that maybe, just maybe, we can convince the world that instead of spending $1.5 trillion every year on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other, that maybe we pool our resources and use that money to combat our common enemy, which is climate change. Let me just say a few words about a couple of other issues that are on your minds, then we'll take a couple of questions from you. I get a little bit tired of the incredible hypocrisy which comes out of many of my colleagues in Washington, D.C. And they go around the country and they tell their constituents and they tell the American people that they believe in small government. They believe in getting the government off the backs of the American people. You ever hear that? Except when it comes to the right of a woman to control her own body. And in that case, it's okay for the federal government and the state government and the local government to tell every woman in this country what she can do. So let me make a very modest promise to you. This is not a big promise, a modest one. That if elected president, I will never, ever appoint any nominee to the Supreme Court who is not 100% in support of Roe v. Wade. And the other issue that is out there, I know that is on everybody's minds, because we can't run away from it, is the issue of the horrific level of gun violence that we are experiencing today. And you all read about recently what happened in Texas, and you read about what happened in El Paso, and you read about what happened in Dayton, and you know what's been happening in this country for years now. And as I often say, it's hard for me to talk about this issue because it conjures up images that are so horrific and so barbaric and so unspeakable about, people coming into a building or into a school and doing insane things. And I'll tell you something else. We just had a woman this morning talking about it a little bit, that the children of this country, I think what we don't talk about is not only, we talk about the loss of life, which is terrible. We don't talk about what the trauma of these events is doing to the kids. When I was young and I went to school, and when all of you went to school, school was a place where you learned, you socialized, you had a good time, you had a bad time, but it was not a place where you felt unsafe. And yet today, there are a whole lot of kids and parents who are worried about the safety of their kids in school. And that is just a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. So the good news in this debate over gun safety is that by and large, the American people, whether they're rural like Vermont and New Hampshire, whether they're urban like LA or Chicago, whether they're gun owners, whether they're non-gun owners, more or less have come together around a series of policies that will make this country safer and will help us combat this epidemic of gun violence. And what does that mean? It means that we expand background checks so that people who have a history of violence do not own guns. Only 90% of the American people support that. We do away with the gun show loophole so that people cannot avoid a background check. We end the straw man provision which says you can legally buy weapons in a gun store and then sell them to criminal elements. And it means, among many other things, that we understand and the American people are moving in this direction, that the function of an assault weapon is to kill as many people as possible in as short a period of time. That's what that weapon is designed to do. It is a military-style weapon. And what I believe, and I believe for many years, and what the American people believe, is that the time is now to ban the sale and distribution of assault weapons in this country. So let me conclude by getting back to the point that I made earlier. Obviously, we have been throughout New Hampshire this weekend. We'll be back many, many times, and the goal here is to win the Democratic primary in New Hampshire. And our goal of this campaign is to win the Democratic nomination. The goal of our winning the Democratic nomination is obviously to defeat Trump. But what I am asking of all of you is something that goes beyond that. And I think I am the only candidate maybe who has ever run for president who will tell you a simple, what I believe to be a truth. And that is that no president, not Bernie Sanders or anybody else, can do it alone. And I can't do it alone, not because I'm not honest or well-intentioned, or not because other candidates are not honest and well-intentioned. We cannot do it alone because we have to recognize that there is a corporate elite out there that has unlimited wealth and extraordinary power over both the political and economic and media life of this country. That is the simple truth. And anybody who comes before you and says, I want to do A, B, C, and D, and they may be well-intentioned, without recognizing that you're going to have to take on that corporate elite, is just not telling you the full truth. So I've told you what my program is, but I need your help to stand with me when we take on the greed of Wall Street, the greed of the insurance companies, the drug companies, the military-industrial complex, when we end private prisons in America. And when we tell the fossil fuel industry, an industry that today gets hundreds of billions a year in tax breaks and subsidies, that, sorry, their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. So I am asking you not only for your vote, which I am, but I'm asking you to work with me after we are inaugurated to help transform this country, to create a government and an economy that works for all, not just the 1%. Thank you all very much. Okay, we're happy. We're going to take some questions. Can you get me a hat here? Okay, we'll take a few questions. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Can help us to identify congressional candidates for the 2020 elections that will support your platform?
Very good. The answer is yes. All right. We're not there yet, but we want to and have in the past and will support progressive candidates who are prepared to take on the political and economic establishment in this country. So the answer is yes. Thank you. Okay, so gentleman right there in a wheelchair.
First of all, thank you for putting yourself through this for us. 2016, I'll say it again. Second, so my question is about something you've not brought up today, which is energy. One of the things I've noticed in common with all of the people's platforms on the left side of things is that they're almost uniformly anti-nuclear, pro-solar, anti-fossil fuel. On the surface, that's great, but from everything I've read, there isn't enough renewable energy that can be built to provide us with the energy we need. Have you thought about thorium nuclear? And as a second part of my question, do you have people that handle individual areas, and is there a way that we can communicate with them?
Sure, yeah, we do. Both in my Senate office and in the campaign, we have some pretty smart people who know a lot about this stuff. Look, here's my thought about nuclear, briefly, is right now we have a significant amount of nuclear waste, dangerous waste, and you know what? We don't know how to get rid of it. All right? It's sitting on the banks of the Connecticut River in the former nuclear power plant in Vernon, Vermont, sitting all over this country. We don't know how to get rid of it. Second of all, you want to build a new nuclear plant? Far more expensive. Okay, there are states, I think it's Georgia, I think could be wrong in this, that where was it? South Carolina, I think it was, where they put billions of dollars into nuclear plants that have gone nowhere because it is very, very expensive. So I think, you make a good point, all right, but it is my view at this moment that the future of energy is, first of all, energy efficiency, which is the low-hanging fruit. Here in New England, we got a lot of old buildings that are not energy efficient. They don't have the insulation, the roofing, the doors, the windows that they need. We can put a lot of people to work cutting our energy bills significantly. Second of all, the potential for solar, both at a utility scale and on our rooftops, is enormous. No, I think it's enormous. And wind as well. States like Iowa, Texas are already doing a really good job in terms of wind. There is geothermal. There are other technologies out there. I hear what you're saying, okay? But right now, that's where I think the future is, energy efficiency and sustainable energies like wind, solar, geothermal, and others. Okay, other questions? Yes, ma'am. Can we get this woman a microphone? Where's the hat? Will, we got a hat? Can you bring it here?
Senator Sanders, I honestly believe that in 2016 you would have won the presidential election had you been the Democratic runner. My question is, how do you anticipate being able to beat the Democratic machine that seems to be trying to roll over you yet again in this primary?
Look, when you have a perspective that stands with the working class of this country, and when you have a perspective that makes it clear that you're going to take on the ruling class of this country, when you have a perspective that takes on not only Donald Trump, not only the Republican Party, but parts of the Democratic establishment. A couple of months ago, there's a group, I don't know how many people have heard of them, it's called Third Way. And this is the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. And they have a lot of influence. They raise a lot of money. And the guy made a statement. He said, Bernie Sanders is an existential threat to the Democratic Party. And I said, you're damn right I am. Because we are going to transform the Democratic Party to be a party of working people, of young people, and all people who believe in social justice. Not to be an appendage of Wall Street. So, what we have done since the last election, we worked hard at this stuff. And I can't tell you that we have accomplished all that we wanted. But you'll remember that last time around, before the first vote was cast here in New Hampshire, or a week earlier in Iowa, my opponent already had 500 superdelegates lined up in support. So it's like running a 100-yard dash, and the other person is on the 30 yards ahead of you when the race starts. 500 superdelegates already. Well, what we have managed to do, I wanted to go further, but what we have managed to do is eliminate the ability of superdelegates to cast their votes on the first ballot. All right? That means we go into the first ballot, we're not going to be 500 superdelegates behind. There will be 0 delegates behind. And that's important. Second of all, look, I'm a big boy. And when you take on the establishment, we ran last time, took on the entire establishment in New Hampshire, took on the establishment in Iowa. We had no big city mayors supporting us. We had a handful of members of Congress. We had one United States senator. That's the reality. I knew it. But we did have the support of 13 million people who voted for our agenda. So I believe that we're going to win, not because we're going to get a support from the establishment or from the media. We got one newspaper endorsement last time around. Seattle Times, God bless their souls. That was it. One major newspaper. All right, so we're taking them on. I know that. But what we are trying to do now is put together an unprecedented grassroots movement. Who on my staff knows how many volunteers that we have here in New Hampshire? Anyone know? Shannon? Where's Shannon? Joe, how many volunteers do we have? Roughly. All right. All right, that's true. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. We have over 1 million volunteers all over this country. Okay? We have received more contributions from people than any candidate in the history of American politics at this point in a campaign. And you know what the average contribution is? Yeah, we went down. It used to be 27. Now we're down to 19. But what does all of that say? What it says is that we are winning the support of working people. Our major source of campaign contributions for teachers. We have a whole lot of people who work at Walmart who are making 11, 12 bucks an hour, who are contributing modestly to our campaign. People who work at Target, people who work in the fast food industry. That is what this campaign is about. So to answer your question, yeah, we are taking on the establishment, and they are tough. They do not want me to be president of the United States. But I think there are a few million people who respectfully disagree with them, and we are going to do what has not been done in modern American history. We are going to take on the establishment. We're going to create a grassroots movement of working people, and we are going to win this election. Thank you all very much. If folks would like, we could do some selfies up here. People, anyone interested in a selfie, let's do it.
God bless you, Bernie. Hey, thank you. Welcome back.
Do pictures more than...